All right, the first thing we're going to do is create a form. And to do that, once again, we're going to use some Bootstrap classes to give our form a nice and modern look and feel. So let's go to main.tsx and bring back Bootstrap. Next, we need to create a new component. We're going to call this form. Now, just like always, we create a function component. Now, in this component, we are not going to return a div. We're going to return an HTML form. Now, let me show you a cool trick. I want to create some markup, but I don't want to write all of that by hand. So look at what I'm going to do. I want to add a div here with the class of mb-3. That is short for margin bottom 3. It's one of the utility classes in Bootstrap that we can use to add some margin below an element. Now, inside this div, I want to add a label with the class of form-label. And right next to that, I want to add an input with the class of form-control. Now, if we press tab, VS Code automatically generates this markup for us. Let me save the changes so you can see it properly. All right, here's our final structure. So we have a div with the class of mb-3. Inside the div, we have a label and an input. Now here we need to set the HTML4 attribute to the ID of this input. So when the user clicks on the label, the input automatically gets focused. So let's give this an ID like name, and we use the same identifier here. Next, we need to set the label to name. Now, just like always, let's test our implementation up to this point. So we go to app component and add our new form component. Let's see what we get. All right, here's what we get. Now, our form is currently so close to the edges of the screen. This looks ugly, so let's add some padding to the body element. Back to our project. Here in the source folder, let's add a new file called index.css. We can write all of our global styles right here. So we're going to give the body element some padding, like 20 pixels. Next, we need to import this file in main.tsx. So import from the current folder index.css. Now, back to the browser. Okay, that's better. So let's add one more input field to this form. Back to our form, we're going to repeat this structure one more time. So we want to create a div with the class of mb-3. Inside the div, we want to add a label with the class of form-label. And right next to that, we want to add an input. Now I want to set the type of this input to number, so it can only accept numeric values. And we should also give this the class of form-control. Tab, save the changes. All right, here's what we get. Now we need to set the HTML4 attribute to the ID of this input. Let's give this the ID of age and use it here. And then we set the label to age. Back to the browser. Here's what we get. And as you can see, the age input field can only accept numbers. So if I type a letter like A, nothing happens. Now finally, we need to add a submit button to this form. So right after the second div, we add a button with two classes, btn and btn-primary. We're going to call this submit and set the type to submit as well. All right, here's what we get. So we're done with the first step. Next, we're going to handle the form submission.